Hello and welcome. It's Gary Duffy. Now, there's been a lot of information around regarding the Norman Street Bridge, and what we want to do is we want to try and clarify some situations or issues that were spoken about. The council has put out its side of the story, and normally people only hear one side of the story. They believe it to be true. And everything else. Now, when Norman Street Bridge was first put up in 2010-11, it was said to be a $50 million bridge that was going to change Ipswich. So in 2013, there was a feasibility study done on it, and the feasibility study came out and said that the Norman Street Bridge would cost between $70 and $130 million. So at that, what they said was at that time they checked 3 sites. The 3 sites were Barry Street, Norman Street, and on Chermside Road. Now, today we're going to take you to the spot. So we're on the north side of Ipswich at the moment. So where the Norman Street Bridge is set to is come across the bridge, and we'll come up there and we'll show you where it goes. Then we'll go over to the north side of Chermside Street, and then we'll go to the north side of Barry Street. Then we'll go on the Ipswich CBD side of Barry Street, then Norman Street, and then we'll go down to Chermside Street. So that you know the sequence of where we're going, and you'll have an understanding of what's going on. Now, when the business case was done, they compared the 3 sites, 70 to 130 million, and they thought that this one here was going to be the preferred site. Did they consult with the community on it? No, they didn't actually. What happened was that in 2015-16, they put out a video about the Norman Street Bridge, and you were meant to accept it without having any knowledge of how we got to the decision-making process. So we're just going to run through a little bit of it. So in 2013, it was $70 to $130 million. In 2015, just 2 years later, it was $230 million for the Norman Street Bridge, and there was going to be a cost to do the business case was $20 million. Now, the Regional Development Australia had a workshop on it. I don't know why Regional Development Australia was featured in it, because Regional Development Australia deals with regional areas. Ipswich is not a regional area, but we do know that there were some mates in there that maybe got a little bit of funding out of it. Now, that was released in 2016-17. What happened was that during the 2016 election, they come out and that it's funded, it was going to go ahead, everything else. So I wrote a letter to the Federal Minister for Development, and I wrote a letter to the Queensland Government at the time, and I said, is there any funding for this? The answer was no. The bridge had never been put to either the state government or the federal government for any funding. So coming out saying it was fully funded, it was never ever funded at all. In fact, they'd never even made an application for funding. So in 2018, the council come out and said it had done stage 1 and 2 of the business case, and we're now doing stage 3 and predicting it will be completed by 2020. Well, in 2020 it wasn't completed, so there was no business case done by 2020. So we looked at it that we'd already spent $20 million on a business case, and now we were doing a 3rd stage of a business case. I don't know how you spend $20 million on a business case and not get it right. Now, the Ipswich City Council came out last month and said that now the bridge is $372 million. So it's gone from a $70 million to a $130 million project to $200 million more at $172 million. So we asked the questions. We haven't got the answers that we wanted about why it was so expensive and had gone so much, and why the other two sites were not considered in the next business case scenario, seeing that now it is $372 million, which would make the other two sites need to be had a look at. So we're just going to have a look through what's gone on and how it goes on, and we'll show you the sites so that you can understand. Now this site here is $372 million. It comes from just over the river here. There's a big pine tree through there that you won't see on the video, but it's directly behind this big gum tree right behind me. So it'll come over there, come across the river, and it'll come across these parklands here. Okay, so it goes across here and it goes into the road up there. So the bridge is going to go over these sports grounds. You've got to keep in mind that during the floods, this clubhouse here, which is at North Ipswich Oval here, the floodwaters went up to the windows of the clubhouse. So that's how high the water flood was through here, and it quite regularly floods here when the river comes up, because it is a floodplain, and most sport fields are built on floodplains because they're sports fields. So it'll go through here, so most likely there will be only one field left here and not the two fields. So that's the junior field, senior field, and so you're going to have a bridge that's going to be running directly through the fields there. Now, why they said it went from, became so expensive, went from $230 million to $372 million is because they underestimated the height of the bridge. So we're talking about a bridge that is 5 pylons, right? So there's 5 pylons across, and they say that they underestimated the height of the bridge across these fields. So they have to be another 2.3 metres higher on this side of the river. So with that underestimation, and you've got to think that there's probably only 3 pylons that are going to be here, they've got to raise them another 2.3 metres, and apparently that's going to cost another $140 million to raise the bridge here, another 2.3 metres. Now, I'm going to put a link below in the description of the Windsor Street Bridge. Now, the Windsor Street Bridge cost $65 million. It first started out at $50 million. It ended up costing $65 million. The whole project cost I think just over $130 million, because they had to dismantle the 140-year-old historic bridge beside it. So that included all the roadworks, the roundabouts and everything else. So that was $65 million. And it's a wider crossing in Windsor of West of Sydney than it is here. Now, we also look at this one here. Now, this one here is down in Harwood. It was completed last year. Now, this one is 35 spans across. It's 4 lanes. It's 35 metres high. So it's a lot higher than here. And actually, you can take a sailboat underneath the bridge. And this one here was 250 million. And so it was a 1.5 kilometre project, and it was 250 million. But somehow in Ipswich, we're putting a bridge across the Bremer River that's 372 million. The numbers don't add up. Do you think the Ipswich ratepayers are being ripped off? No, I think that we are. because I don't think that we've actually gone and had a look at alternatives to it. So that's the reason why they say it's gone from $230 million to $372 million, is because they underestimated the height here. So, and somehow that's raised it by the price of it by $140 million. Now we're going to go over to the to Moore's Pocket now. Now at Moore's Pocket, we're on the other side of the Chermside bridge where it would come across, was planned to come across. We'll show you that side of it. Then we'll go down, back down to Barry Street on the North Ipswich side, and we'll show you that side, and then go to Barry Street, Norman Street, and then over to Chermside Street. Thank you. So now we're at the North Ipswich side of Chermside Road. Now Chermside Road is just across here. So with Chermside Road just across there, the point of the bridge was that it would come across the river here and come up here. Now this was the third option that the council had, was Chermside Road across there. That's the sports ground over there, the football club and the sports ground over there. And up here we have Moore's Pocket. So up here we have Moore's Pocket Road is up at the top of the street up here. So the bridge would have come across here somewhere, or they would have resumed a house here or something like that. Now this side of the river here, we do get flooding this side, but the bridge would have to be from Moore's Pocket Road to Chermside Road. So it is quite a big span across here. It is quite a, at a guesstimate, I'd probably say it's nearly 400 metres from the top of the road to the top of the road, at a guesstimate. That was the third option, and I've put it down here to show you what the options were. So we've had a look at the North Ipswich oval side of Norman Street. This is Chermside Road section, and now we're just going to head over to Barry Street on North Ipswich side. Thank you. Hi, now we're at what we call Laurie Street. So we have Laurie Street here behind me. Barry Street is directly through that gap there. Now that gap there is an easement. So where we are now, we're at North Ipswich on the other side of the river from Barry Street. Now this site here, which is the old plywood site, was bought by the Ipswich City Council. So the Ipswich City Council owned this whole site. So it was bought off Borrell in 2016 for an undisclosed amount, and it doesn't show up on their bookwork or their paperwork or anywhere where the council has bought this. But I wrote to Borrell and asked them, did they sell it to the Ipswich City Council? And they said, yes, we sold it to the Ipswich City Council, to an entity of the Ipswich City Council. So the Ipswich City Council bought the site, and they are the owners of it. So it is council land. Now, through that gap in the trees, and they're not native trees, so they were planted here when the plywood mill was here. But across the other side there is Barry Street, and that's a full easement. And Barry Street on the other side is the same height as this bank, and that's the shortest path across the river. Up here we have Laurie Street. Now Laurie Street is, when you take it from footpath to footpath, is 4 lanes wide. They've just put the gutters in close, that's all. But when you go from lamppost to lamppost, you can see that that is actually a 4-lane road. That was meant to go in the original plans. This was meant to go across through over to the other side of the Bremer River over the other side, and then over the other side there was meant to be on the original plans another bridge that would go across over to Wood End Brussels side. So they were going to connect this here directly all the way through here on the original plans that I have seen. So there was a bridge here through this road, which was 4 lanes, through 4 lanes over to there, and then down and put a little 2-lane bridge across over into Brussel Wood End area. So and that would go on the, to put it in perspective, it's beside the Riverlink shopping centre. So this bridge here would give access to the sports grounds and football grounds from here. Also, so that people from over in Ipswich side could use car parking over there and access down here. So we're now going to move over to the Ipswich city centre side of Barry Street, and we'll go from Barry Street down to Norman Street and then over to Chermside Road. So here we are at the moment. Now we're at the Barry Street crossing. So this was the an option that the council had, and where we were just standing there, we were just over on, you can see the concrete over there, that's the plywood mill. So that was the gap between the trees. This is a designated easement, so as you can see, this easement is quite wide. Now there's Barry Street up here. Now that's up there is Chermside Road, which is on that bridge up there that you may be able to just see where the orange is up there. Now you can may see those people standing on the footpath there. That road is actually quite wide. It's almost 4 lanes wide. Probably 3 lanes, at easy 3 lanes. But the first street here where that white cars are going past here, that's Blackwell Street and King Edward Parade. And down here we just have the water park, so to put you in perspective. So if Barry Street was done, there would be a ramp coming off Chermside Road down onto this road. It would be extended out to the gutter line, which is the normal easement for the road, so that it would come down through here. And because this here is actually quite wide, there's no need for resumption of any properties, and it's only a matter of just putting a bridge across here, lane onto here, lane onto there, and that lane off Chermside Road onto this and Blackwell Street and King Edward Parade. So that means that coming up Jacaranda Avenue, they can come on here. Coming off Chermside Road, they can come off here. Coming off King Edward Parade, they can come on here and just go straight across the river. So this one here is the easiest one. This one was in the $70 million bracket. So for $70 million, the bridge could have been put across here. It's basically one span in this area here. If you have a look at it, from there across to the river, it's only one span across. So that would be the easiest and cheapest option to do. I think it was considered at the 70, but now that when the other one was considered at 130, 70 to 130 over there at Norman Street, this one was still in contention. But now the other one at Norman Street has gone out to $372 million on an estimate, so you can imagine that they're probably going to put 10% or more on that, which will blow that right out. Now the area across here, across the river here, is narrower than the $65 million bridge just built at Windsor, west of Sydney. So it's a lot narrower than that bridge. And we're not, when we have a look at the bridge, David Trumpy Bridge, which is 4 lanes, we're not looking at taking all that traffic. We're looking at supplementing that by taking traffic off that. So whether or not this here could be a 3-lane bridge, or have a movable centre lane so that it's 2 lanes one way in the morning and 2 lanes the other way in the afternoon, you could actually reduce the cost of this bridge here quite significantly, and have it up there. So it would still service the north side of Ipswich. You can still go to Warwick Road to Mount Cosby Road. You can still go to Pine Street, Down Street, and everything else. And this here would have enabled you to go extend across to the next bridge stand, which would have gone into Wood End, Brassel area. So that's what this one is. So now we're going up to the Norman Street Bridge. So here we are now. We're at the Norman Street crossing. So the Norman Street is behind me here, or just this way, and this is where it comes across the river. As you can see, it's got to go all the way down there, and we can see that the river, you might be able to see, but the river is just down there and in there. But it's about maybe 150 metres from this bank down to the river. Now, over there, you can see where I was just over there. That's a plywood mill over there, so Barry Street is not that far away from this one. But that side over there was $70 million, but this one here is $372 million. So we're paying $300 million more for a bridge only a couple of hundred metres apart. Only because this one here goes across to the widest part of the river. It doesn't make sense, but anyhow, so when the council put it up, they originally looking at putting the proposal through. The council said it had some community hall consultations, and if someone has asked me, did they have consultation? Well, they had community hall consultations, and the consultations were in regards to, we're putting a bridge in and we're going to buy or resume your house. So they were talking about resuming all the houses along Jacaranda Street, widening Jacaranda Street, putting a flyover around through the Bunnings, and that's why the Bunnings moved. And then you had the Nimmo Street land deal that is now part of a corruption trial in the Queensland Supreme Court, where the council sold the land to a developer, but it never left the council's hands. The developer put a development application in, and then sold the land with the development application, and then just all that was paid was a deposit or something. It was just a crazy deal. And apparently, if you read about it, it was apparently discussed in Bubbles Bathhouse in Fortitude Valley. So now we're going to stay on Norman Street 1. For Norman Street to work, it's got to go past 4 schools or educational centres. There's 2 primary schools, 2 kindergartens, a childcare centre, a school sports ground, and then over the other side, where it goes across the other side on North Ipswich, it comes out at the North Ipswich School. So it impacts a lot of school zones, and I think that is not acceptable. The Barry Street one doesn't really impact any school zones at all, and there's no difference between the Barry Street one, the Chermside Street one, as to the school zones, because the only school that maybe increased traffic would be the one at Five Ways there. But we'll do a wrap up after we're going to go down to the Chermside Street one now, and then after that we'll do a wrap up at the end of it. I'll put the links in below to what has gone on with this, so that you can follow it on the links. So we're here now at the Five Ways, and as you can see, we're here at the Five Ways. Now, part of the plans for the Norman Street bridge was that Glebe Road, which I'm standing on now, so all the traffic up here from Glebe Road would be blocked from going into the Five Ways here, so they were going to block off the Glebe Road. So Glebe Road is going to be a no-through road anymore. So the reason they say that was they didn't want people from Newtown, from Glebe Road over, or from this side of town here, going down Chermside Road onto Jacaranda Avenue, onto Norman Street, across the Norman Street Bridge. So their thinking was that they were going to block Glebe Road off. That means that the shops up on this end of Glebe Road would have been in a dead end. And I don't know how you kill a business any quicker than if you put a business in a dead end street. And that's what this would have been, is just a dead end street. So not only would it be detrimental to the businesses here, it would be detrimental to the communities that use Glebe Road to access through the city and the byways and everything else. So the plans of the Norman Street Bridge included blocking off Glebe Road, and you can read about that on it. So look onwards to the next slide. So here we are, we're at the Chermside Street. So Chermside Street comes down beside the Bulldogs football ground here. So this one here is, so we're down here in Basin Pocket. So this is Chermside Street, comes past the Ipswich Girls Grammar School, comes down through here to Basin Pocket. And then what it does here, the bridge was to go across here at the river here. And as you can see how much higher we are here to the other side, so that's why it would have to go up onto the other side there, onto Moore's Pocket Road. So this one here was part of the calculations of the $70 to $130 million range with Barry Street and with Norman Street. Now we got to consider, we'll wind up with and just run through a short summary of it. Now in 2010, bridge was going to cost $50 million. In 2013, the bridge was going to cost $230 million. In 2015-16, there was a $20 million business case study done. I know $20 million is a lot of money, and when you have a look at it, that would buy 40 houses in Ipswich, at least 40 houses in Ipswich. So, and that was a business study. So for someone to sit down and do some calculations and go and check how many cars go across David Trumpy Bridge and then come down and do a few business study on it. So that come back at $230 million. In 2020, the Norman Street Bridge is now going to cost $372 million. Barry Street Bridge still is going to cost around about $65 to $70 million based on the cost of the bridge at Windsor. Bridge across here is going to cost around about $50 to $130 million, and is it acceptable to have one here to connect this group here? Quite possibly yes. Barry Street is a no-brainer. Norman Street Bridge is, to me, a white elephant fail. One, it goes past 4 school zones. 2, you'd have to resume most of the houses on Jacaranda Avenue. 3, you'd have to put a flyover the railway line there at the Bunnings to come across the railway line, because trucks can't, or trucks and any high vehicles can't go under the bridge or up over that, around that crossing there to get onto there. So the cost of that is just astronomically expensive. Then it goes across the other side of the river through a floodplain and everything else. Now a lot of people said, oh, but Barry Street floods. I tell you that if Barry Street at Blackwell Street at Barry Street is underwater, half of Goodna is underwater. The Brisbane CBD, the Ipswich CBD would be underwater through Devil's Gully. and you would have really no access if the top of Barry Street, if the plywood was flooding, mill over there was flooding, the Ipswich motorway at Redbank Plains would be totally underwater, right, like it was in 2011, but even higher. And the water would be over the railway line heading into Ipswich Central Station. So the chances of Barry Street being out during a flood is almost zero. But then you have a look at Jacaranda Street, which comes on the Norman Street. Jacaranda Street down there near Lifeline goes underwater all the time because it's the Bremer River backs up into there. So this one here would flood, no doubt, on any 1 in 25, which would be a pretty minor type flooding. But is it worthwhile putting one here? Probably. Does flooding affect bridges? All over Australia there are hundreds and hundreds of bridges that go underwater. Even down in Logan yesterday we had 3 bridges underwater, a road underwater and everything else. So does it affect it? No, it doesn't affect it because for the rest of the time, the other 364 days of the year, it's not flooded and it's being used and cars are being driven across it. So we've got to weigh up value for money. The good value for money is that Barry Street, we can do that probably within 2 years it can be built. Norman Street would take another decade or more, and this one here would take a little bit longer to build, and it's probably not a priority, especially where we have Herbert Street Bridge across the railway line, has no funding from the state government and is going to close next weekend. Then we have Mount Cosby overpass, needs to be upgraded. Then we have the Cunningham Highway out there at Redbank. It needs to be upgraded. So in order of priority, we could do Barry Street within 2 years in budget, less than $70 million, and get a second bridge in, and that's why I prefer it. But I wanted you to all have this information and walk you through the 3 sites so that you all understand. And thank you, and I'll catch you soon.